There is a mistake people make every day without realizing it. They make themselves too available, too easy to reach, too quick to respond, too willing to help, too eager to prove themselves, too comfortable giving their time, attention, energy, and knowledge away for nothing. And then they wonder why people stop valuing them. The world does not automatically reward what is generous. It rewards what is valuable. The moment you become available to everyone, your presence begins to lose its psychological weight. Not because you are less valuable, but because human beings naturally pay more attention to what they cannot access whenever they want. Think about the things you encounter every day without thinking twice. They are familiar, predictable, and constantly available. Now compare that with something rare, limited, or difficult to obtain. Your attention works the same way. When people know they can reach you at any moment, receive an immediate response, and expect you to drop everything whenever they need you, your time gradually becomes something they assume rather than appreciate. This is why being constantly available can quietly destroy your position. You answer every message instantly. You accept every invitation. You respond to every request. You make yourself present whenever someone wants attention. At first, this may feel generous. You may even believe that being dependable means always being accessible. But there is a difference between being reliable and being permanently available. Reliability means people can trust your word. Availability means people believe they have unrestricted access to you. One creates respect. The other can create entitlement. Your time needs structure because your life needs direction. If you allow everyone else to determine where your attention goes, you eventually become a passenger in your own life. Your schedule becomes a reflection of other people's priorities. Their emergencies become your emergencies. Their boredom becomes your interruption. Their lack of planning becomes your responsibility, and slowly you begin sacrificing the goals that were supposed to build your future. The solution is not to become cold or deliberately ignore people. It is to become selective. You can care about people without being constantly accessible to them. You can be generous without becoming a resource that everyone consumes. You can answer later. You can decline invitations. You can protect uninterrupted time. You can finish your own priorities before responding to someone else's demands. There is power in allowing a message to wait. There is power in saying, "I can't today." There is power in not explaining every decision. There is power in having a life that continues whether someone is asking for your attention or not. When you stop responding automatically, you create space between stimulus and reaction. That space gives you control. Instead of asking, "What does this person want from me?" you begin asking, "Does this deserve my attention?" That single question can change the quality of your entire life. People also learn how to treat you through repetition. If you consistently abandon your plans whenever someone calls, they learn that your plans are flexible. If you constantly answer messages at midnight, people learn that your time has no boundaries. If you repeatedly tolerate interruptions, interruptions become normal. You don't have to announce new boundaries with dramatic speeches. Your behavior teaches them. This is where scarcity becomes powerful. When your attention is selective, it becomes more meaningful. When you give someone your full attention, they recognize that you chose to give it rather than being forced to. When you spend time with someone because you genuinely want to, rather than because you are afraid of losing them, your presence carries a completely different energy. But scarcity should never become a childish manipulation tactic. Disappearing simply to make someone anxious is not power. Pretending to be busy is not value. Manufacturing jealousy is not confidence. These are performances. Real scarcity comes from having something meaningful to do with your time. Build a life that requires your attention. Develop your skills. Work on your goals. Ride, train, docrecate, learn. Improve. Spend time with people who genuinely matter. When your life becomes full of purpose, you naturally stop hovering around other people's lives, waiting to be noticed. And that is the deeper transformation. You are not becoming less available because you want people to chase you. You are becoming less available because you have finally decided that your time deserves a destination. Your attention is no longer something you scatter across every person, conversation, notification, and request that demands it. You begin treating it like a limited resource because every minute you give away is a minute you can never recover, and every piece of attention you spend on someone else is attention that cannot be invested in the person you are becoming. The easiest way to become valuable is to stop trying to convince people that you are valuable and start developing something that makes your presence difficult to replace. In a world where almost everyone wants attention, recognition, and status, very few people are willing to spend years becoming genuinely competent. They want the appearance of expertise without the discipline required to earn it. They want respect before they have developed anything worth respecting. But real value comes from what you can consistently do that others cannot easily reproduce. Think about what happens when a person possesses a rare skill. People seek them out. Their time becomes more valuable. Their opinions carry more weight. Their work creates opportunities. They don't need to constantly announce how talented they are because the results demonstrate it. Competence speaks a language that does not require much explanation. This is why you should become difficult to replace. Do not attempt to master everything. Choose something that matters and go deeper than most people are willing to go. Study it when nobody is watching. Practice when you are bored. Continue when the excitement disappears. Learn the details that ordinary people ignore. Make mistakes, analyze them, correct them, and return stronger. Most people quit during the boring stage, which is precisely why the boring stage becomes your advantage. Rare value is usually created through repetition. 1 hour of effort does not transform you. One book does not make you an expert. One successful project does not make you exceptional. But hundreds of hours accumulated over months and years can create a level of competence that separates you from everyone who only participated occasionally. The goal is not simply to know more. It is to become better at applying what you know. Knowledge without execution is decoration. You can read hundreds of books about communication and still be terrible at communicating. You can watch endless videos about leadership and still be incapable of leading under pressure. You can study discipline while remaining controlled by every impulse that enters your mind. Value appears when knowledge becomes behavior. This is where most people underestimate the power of mastery. They constantly switch directions because they are looking for something easier. 1 month they want to learn business. The next month they want to become a content creator. Then they want to learn investing, psychology, fitness, public speaking, or something else. They keep collecting beginnings but never stay long enough to become dangerous at one thing. Diff creates distinction. If you want to become expensive, become excellent at something people actually need. And then combine it with another skill. A person who understands psychology and communication is more valuable than someone who understands only psychology. Someone who can write and understand marketing becomes more versatile than someone who can only write. Someone who understands technology and business can create opportunities that neither skill alone would provide. Your advantage often comes from the combination. You don't necessarily need to be the best person in the world at one skill. You can become unusually valuable by combining several strong abilities in a way that few people possess. But there is another part of becoming difficult to replace. Emotional control. Skills are powerful, but people who cannot control themselves eventually sabotage their own abilities. They become angry when criticized. They become distracted by insults. They abandon long-term goals because of temporary emotions. They need constant validation. They make decisions when afraid, desperate, jealous, or frustrated. A person who can remain composed when everyone else is reacting possesses a rare form of value. Your ability to think clearly under pressure can become one of your greatest advantages. Train yourself to pause. Observe before responding. Think before speaking. Separate emotion from decision. When something goes wrong, don't immediately ask who is to blame. Ask what happened, what caused it, and what you can do next. That mindset makes you increasingly difficult to manipulate because emotional triggers no longer control your behavior as easily. Your value also grows when people can trust your consistency. Anyone can perform well once. The rare person performs well repeatedly. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. The valuable person maintains standards when nobody is watching. Anyone can speak confidently when everything is going well. The valuable person remains composed when circumstances become difficult. Consistency creates trust, and trust creates influence. So stop measuring your worth by how much attention you receive. Measure it by what you are capable of producing, solving, creating, understanding, and controlling. Build something that improves with time. Develop a skill that compounds. Become someone who can enter a difficult situation and make it better. Become someone who can solve problems instead of creating them. Become someone whose presence adds clarity instead of confusion. Because once you become genuinely competent, you no longer have to chase validation. Opportunities begin to recognize you. People begin to seek your judgment. Your work begins to speak before you do. And the more difficult your abilities become to reproduce, the less you need to compete for attention because you are no longer trying to be noticed by everyone. You are becoming the person the right people cannot easily replace. Your time, attention, knowledge, and emotional energy are not unlimited resources. Yet many people give them away as if they were. They respond to every request, solve every problem, listen to every complaint, and make themselves available whenever someone wants something. They believe generosity automatically creates respect, but generosity without boundaries often creates expectation. When people receive something repeatedly without having to earn it, they can stop seeing it as a gift and start seeing it as something they are entitled to. This is why you must stop giving premium value at discount prices. Your value is not determined by how much you can give. It is also determined by what you choose to give, to whom you give it, and under what conditions. A person who gives everything to everyone eventually has very little left for the things that actually matter. Look at your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. If you spend hours listening to meaningless arguments, scrolling endlessly, responding to unnecessary messages, and trying to satisfy people who constantly demand more, you are paying with something you can never recover. Your time. The same applies to your emotional energy. Some people do not want solutions. They want endless access to your emotional capacity. They repeatedly bring the same problems, the same drama, and the same conflicts into your life. You listen once because you care. You listen twice because you want to help. But eventually, you have to recognize when helping someone has become participating in their pattern. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to say, I can't take this on right now. You are allowed to stop explaining yourself. You are allowed to protect your peace without feeling guilty. This does not make you selfish. It means you understand that generosity becomes meaningful when it is intentional. Imagine someone who owns a rare resource but gives it away every time somebody asks. Eventually, the resource loses its perceived value because access is effortless. Human attention can work the same way. If someone knows they can receive your time whenever they want, they may stop appreciating what that time costs you. This is especially important in relationships. If you constantly initiate conversations, constantly solve problems, constantly apologize, constantly make sacrifices, and constantly adjust yourself to accommodate another person, you can accidentally create an unequal relationship. One person gives, while the other becomes accustomed to receiving. The answer is not to suddenly become cruel. The answer is to restore balance. Give because you choose to give, not because you are terrified of being rejected. Help because you genuinely want to help, not because you need someone to like you. Listen because the conversation matters, not because you are afraid that silence will make someone leave. When your generosity comes from strength instead of insecurity, it becomes more powerful. You also need to understand that not every request deserves an immediate yes. Someone else's urgency does not automatically become your responsibility. People will often present their priorities as if they should become yours. They may pressure you, make you feel guilty, or imply that you are selfish for refusing. But guilt is not always evidence that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes, guilt is simply the discomfort of breaking an old pattern. If you have spent years pleasing people, setting a boundary can feel unnatural. Let it feel unnatural. You are training yourself to stop trading self-respect for acceptance. There will be people who benefited from your lack of boundaries who become uncomfortable when you develop them. That discomfort does not necessarily mean your boundary is wrong. Sometimes it means the relationship was built around your willingness to overgive. Pay attention to reciprocity. You do not need perfect equality in every interaction. Sometimes you will give more, and sometimes another person will. But over time, there should be some sense of mutual respect. If someone consistently takes your time while showing little concern for your needs, stop increasing your investment. Do not keep lowering your standards to maintain access to people. And do not keep offering your best energy to situations that repeatedly return nothing but exhaustion. Your highest quality attention should go toward the highest value areas of your life. Your health, your goals, your craft, your family, your growth, and the relationships that genuinely matter deserve the best version of you. You cannot give your best to everything. That means you must choose. Every time you say yes to something meaningless, you are potentially saying no to something meaningful. Every hour spent proving yourself to someone can be an hour spent improving yourself. Every argument you continue can become attention stolen from your future. Every person you repeatedly rescue can become time taken away from building your own strength. So stop asking whether you can give more. Ask whether giving more is actually creating value. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is your attention. Sometimes it is your knowledge. Sometimes it is your time. And sometimes the most valuable thing you can give is nothing at all, because your silence, distance, and refusal to participate can communicate that your resources are no longer available for careless consumption, leaving people to finally recognize the difference between having access to you and actually deserving your best. Respect begins with the standards you establish, not the demands you make. Many people want to be respected, but they never examine what they repeatedly tolerate. They complain about being ignored, interrupted, manipulated, or taken for granted, yet continue accepting the same behavior because they are afraid that enforcing a boundary might cost them a relationship. The uncomfortable truth is that every boundary you refuse to enforce teaches people something about what they can get away with. A boundary is not a threat. It is a decision. It tells people where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. It tells them what you will participate in and what you will walk away from. Most importantly, it tells yourself that your time, energy, and dignity have limits. You do not need to announce every boundary dramatically. In fact, the strongest boundaries are often communicated through simple behavior. If someone repeatedly speaks to you disrespectfully, you do not need to deliver a long speech about respect. You can end the conversation. If someone repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute, you do not need to beg them to take you seriously. You can stop organizing your schedule around them. If someone constantly demands your attention while ignoring your needs, you can reduce your availability. Your behavior becomes the message. The problem is that many people explain their boundaries instead of enforcing them. They say, "Please don't talk to me like that," and then remain in the conversation when the behavior continues. They say, "I don't have time for this," and then spend another hour arguing. They say, "I won't tolerate being treated this way," and then return to the same situation the next day, when there are no consequences. Boundaries become suggestions. You don't need to punish people. You simply need to make your actions consistent with your standards. If someone crosses a line, access changes. If someone repeatedly disrespects your time, access to your time becomes limited. If someone abuses your generosity becomes selective. This is where people often misunderstand confidence. Confidence is not walking into every room demanding respect. Confidence is knowing what you will and will not accept without needing everyone to agree with you. You don't need permission to have standards. You don't need approval to say no. You don't need to justify every decision. And you certainly don't need to convince someone that your boundary is reasonable before you enforce it. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries may challenge them. They may call you selfish. They may say, "You have changed." They may accuse you of becoming distant or difficult. Sometimes they are simply reacting to the fact that the version of you they could easily control is disappearing. Do not confuse their discomfort with your wrongdoing. At the same time, boundaries should not become an excuse for arrogance. You do not need to control other people's behavior. You can only control your participation. You cannot force someone to speak respectfully, but you can decide whether you remain in the conversation. You cannot force someone to value your time, but you can decide whether they continue receiving it. You cannot force someone to become loyal, honest, or considerate, but you can decide whether they remain close to you. That distinction gives you enormous freedom. You stop trying to control people and start controlling your access. This also means becoming comfortable with disappointing people. If your entire identity depends on keeping everyone happy, boundaries will feel almost impossible. Every no will feel like rejection. Every disagreement will feel dangerous. Every person's disappointment will feel like evidence that you have failed. But you are not responsible for preventing every uncomfortable emotion someone else experiences. Sometimes people will be disappointed because you said no. Let them be disappointed. Sometimes someone will dislike your decision. Let them dislike it. Sometimes a relationship will change because you stopped accepting behavior that was damaging your self-respect. Let it change. A boundary has no power if you are unwilling to accept the consequences of enforcing it. Your standards should become more important than temporary approval. This does not mean becoming rigid. Healthy boundaries can be flexible when circumstances genuinely require it, but flexibility should come from choice, not fear. The goal is not to make people afraid of crossing you. The goal is to make your standards predictable. When people know that disrespect ends the conversation, they understand the standard. When they know your time is not automatically available, they learn to plan differently. When they know you will calmly walk away from manipulation, manipulation becomes less effective. This is how respect becomes natural rather than demanded. You stop asking, "How do I make them respect me?" You start asking, "What behavior am I willing to accept?" That question changes everything because it puts the responsibility back where it belongs. You cannot control how people think about you. You cannot control whether everyone likes you. You cannot control whether someone approves of your choices, but you can control your standards, your responses, your availability, and your willingness to remain in situations that diminish you until your actions become so consistent that people no longer need to be told where your limits are because they can see them clearly in what you continue to allow and what you quietly refuse to tolerate. The ability to walk away is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer controlled by desperation. When you know you can leave a situation, a relationship, an opportunity, or a conversation that consistently diminishes you, your entire psychology changes. You stop negotiating from fear. You stop accepting conditions that violate your standards simply because you are afraid of losing something. You begin to understand that holding on is not always strength. Sometimes strength is recognizing when something has stopped being worth the cost. Many people remain in situations that make them miserable because they have convinced themselves that leaving means failure. They stay in friendships where they are constantly disrespected. They remain in relationships where their needs are ignored. They continue working in environments that destroy their confidence because they are terrified of uncertainty. They keep chasing people who have already demonstrated that they are not interested. They think endurance is always admirable. It isn't. There is a difference between perseverance and attachment. Perseverance means continuing because something meaningful is worth the effort. Attachment means continuing because you are afraid of what happens if you stop. That fear can make you accept almost anything. You start thinking, what if I don't find someone else? What if another opportunity never comes? What if they leave? What if I fail? What if I regret walking away? These questions can trap you inside situations that you already know are wrong for you. The ability to walk away begins with building internal independence. You have to believe that your future does not depend entirely on one person, one opportunity, one job, or one source of approval. The more dependent you become on a single source, the easier you are to control. If someone knows you cannot leave, they have leverage. If an employer knows you have no alternatives, they have leverage. If someone knows you are terrified of being alone, they have leverage. If someone knows you will tolerate anything to keep them, they have leverage. Independence reduces that leverage. This does not mean you should constantly threaten to leave. That is not strength. Repeatedly announcing that you will walk away without actually doing it teaches people that your words have no consequences. The real power comes from quietly knowing that you can. You don't need to threaten departure. You need to be prepared for it. Preparation changes your behavior because you are no longer negotiating from desperation. Build skills that create options, save resources that create flexibility. Develop relationships beyond one person. Maintain your own interests. Learn how to be alone without feeling abandoned. Become comfortable starting again. The more capable you become of rebuilding, the less terrified you become of losing something that no longer serves you. And there is another important lesson. Walking away does not always mean physically leaving forever. Sometimes it means withdrawing your attention. Sometimes it means ending an argument. Sometimes it means refusing to chase someone who has become distant. Sometimes it means emotionally detaching from a situation you cannot immediately change. You can stop participating in a power struggle without needing to win it. You can stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You can stop trying to convince someone to appreciate you. You can stop chasing closure from someone who will never give it. Walking away can be quiet. In fact, quiet departure is often stronger than dramatic confrontation because it demonstrates that you are no longer dependent on being understood. But this requires emotional discipline. Your emotions may tell you to send another message, demand another explanation, prove your worth, or force a final conversation. Your mind may create endless reasons to return. This is where you must learn to distinguish discomfort from danger. Missing someone does not mean you made the wrong decision. Feeling lonely does not mean you should return. Feeling uncertain does not mean you should surrender your standards. Sometimes the pain of leaving is simply the price of ending an attachment. Give yourself enough time to experience that discomfort without immediately running back to what created it. The person who can tolerate temporary discomfort gains enormous freedom. They can say no. They can leave. They can wait. They can negotiate. They can reject bad opportunities. They can protect their standards because they are not terrified of what happens afterward. That is true leverage. You become difficult to control when you are willing to lose what other people assume you cannot live without. And paradoxically, this often improves your relationships. When you stay because you genuinely choose to stay rather than because you are afraid to leave, your presence becomes more meaningful. You are not clinging. You are choosing. That difference can be felt. Your goal is not to become someone who walks away from everything at the first sign of difficulty. Some things deserve patience. Some relationships deserve honest conversations. Some goals require years of persistence. The question is not, is this difficult? The question is this difficulty building something valuable, or is it slowly destroying something essential? Know the difference. Fight for what is worth fighting for. But never become so desperate to keep something that you are willing to abandon yourself in the process. Because the moment you understand that you can rebuild, restart, and continue without begging for permission, your decisions become cleaner, your standards become stronger, and your ability to walk away becomes less about proving that you do not need anyone and more about knowing that you will never again trade your dignity simply because you are afraid of what comes after you finally let go of what you were never meant to keep. The final step is understanding the difference between being valuable and simply looking valuable. In a world obsessed with appearances, it is easy to confuse attention with importance, confidence with competence, and popularity with real influence. You can create an image of success, dress like a successful person, speak with confidence, and convince people that you are powerful. But none of those things guarantee that you actually possess value. Eventually, reality exposes the difference between appearance and substance. Real value does not require constant announcement. You do not need to repeatedly tell people that you are intelligent if your decisions demonstrate intelligence. You do not need to announce that you are disciplined if your habits prove it. You do not need to demand respect if your behavior consistently communicates self-respect. You do not need to convince everyone that you are important when your abilities naturally make your presence meaningful. This is why the obsession with looking valuable can become a trap. You begin performing for other people instead of building yourself. You become more concerned with how successful you appear than with what you are actually accomplishing. You chase followers instead of developing influence. You collect compliments instead of developing competence. You seek status instead of developing substance. The problem with an image is that it requires constant maintenance. The moment people stop believing it, the performance collapses. But genuine value becomes stronger with time. If you develop a real skill, you carry it with you. If you develop emotional control, nobody can take it away simply by criticizing you. If you develop discipline, it continues producing results long after motivation disappears. If you develop good judgment, every difficult experience can make it sharper. If you develop knowledge and learn how to apply it, your understanding compounds. That is why your goal should not be to convince people that you are exceptional. Your goal should be to become so capable that your results create the conversation for you. Imagine two people entering the same room. One spends 10 minutes talking about how connected, intelligent, successful, and important they are. The other says very little but listens carefully, understands the situation, asks precise questions, and solves a problem that everyone else has been struggling with. Who leaves the stronger impression? Usually, the person who created value, because value has evidence. You can claim that you are a great leader, but leadership becomes visible when people trust your decisions during uncertainty. You can claim that you are confident, But confidence becomes visible when you can remain calm while being criticized. You can claim that you understand people, but understanding becomes visible when you recognize motives without immediately reacting to them. Your behavior is the evidence. This is also why you should stop chasing recognition too early. Recognition can become addictive. You accomplish something and immediately want someone to notice. You improve yourself and immediately want validation. You make progress and immediately compare yourself with someone else. But every time you need external confirmation before believing your work matters, you give other people control over your satisfaction. Build anyway, improve anyway, study anyway, practice anyway, got great anyway, even when nobody is watching. There is tremendous power in becoming comfortable with invisible progress. Most meaningful transformation happens before anyone notices. The body changes before people comment on your discipline. Your knowledge develops before anyone recognizes your expertise. Your confidence grows through hundreds of private decisions that nobody sees. The person you become in private eventually determines the person people encounter in public. This is why you should focus on substance. Become better at communicating. Become better at listening. Become better at solving problems. Become better at controlling impulses. Become better at managing your time. Become better at making decisions under pressure. Become someone who can be trusted when circumstances become difficult. The more substance you build, the less you need to perform. And there is another important element of real value: consistency. Anyone can appear impressive for a moment. Anyone can have one good conversation. Anyone can make one successful decision. Anyone can demonstrate confidence when everything is going perfectly. But what happens when things go wrong? That is where character becomes visible. Can you remain composed? Can you accept criticism without collapsing? Can you admit when you are wrong? Can you continue working when nobody praises you? Can you maintain your standards when taking the easier path would be more comfortable? These are the moments that create genuine value. You do not become expensive because you convince people to think highly of you. You become expensive because your abilities, character, judgment, and presence have become difficult to replace. That is why you should stop asking, how can I make people see my value? Ask instead, what can I build inside myself that remains valuable, even when nobody is watching? That question moves you away from performance and toward mastery. You stop trying to look confident and start becoming competent. You stop trying to look mysterious and start becoming selective. You stop trying to look successful and start producing results. You stop demanding respect and start developing the qualities that naturally create it. And eventually, something changes. You no longer need to enter every room trying to prove that you belong there. You no longer need to compete for every person's attention. You no longer need to explain why your time matters. You understand that real value is quiet because it does not depend on applause. So become the person whose presence solves problems, whose word carries weight, whose discipline survives pressure, and whose absence is genuinely felt. Do not build an image that requires everyone else to believe in you. Build a character that you can believe in yourself. Do not chase the appearance of being expensive. Become so skilled, disciplined, selective, and self-respecting that your value becomes obvious without explanation. Because when you stop performing value and start creating it, you no longer need to convince the world that you are worth something. The evidence will already be there.